able to safely and easily portage a canoe all by yourself is not only important for your crew to be able to portage quickly and efficiently, to me, it's also a great sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. So, how do you portage a canoe all by yourself? Well, keep watching because I'm going to show you.
Hey, real quick, right before we jump into this video, if you'd do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Also, thank you for subscribing to this channel. If you'd like to be notified of future videos, please hit that bell icon. Have a great day and enjoy this video.
Portaging the canoe can be an awkward experience, and to make it more awkward, you can't afford to damage the canoe or damage yourself, both of which can be quite easy to do. I'm going to take it step by step and show you exactly what you need to know and do to portage a canoe all by yourself. So this brings up an interesting point. It's often asked, how tall do you have to be to carry one of the canoes by yourself? And honestly, there's not a good answer to that question. You could be 6 foot tall and don't know how to carry a canoe carefully, and that would be just as damaging to the canoe. If you were short and you could carry the canoe carefully by yourself, but due to the environmental circumstances you may find yourself in, such as steep terrain or the water is deep at the entry at the arrival or departure site, it just puts you in a bad situation where you just can't help but bang the canoe on the deck. So there's not really a great answer. At some point, a shorter person will just find it very difficult to navigate deeper entry and exit points on the arrival and departure side due to the deep water, but then also if the terrain is rocky, there's a lot of boulders around. The canoe is 18 feet long, so that's a lot of length to accommodate for. I mean, one accommodation is you could sidestep out of the water, but then if there's trees right there and boulders, that's not going to allow you to do that. So I'm sorry I don't have a great answer for you. If you just had to press me for an answer, I'd probably say that if you're a little bit less than 5 foot tall, you probably would find it challenging to carry a canoe by yourself and not bang the canoe into the ground, especially the bow or the stern. If the arrival or departure site is anything but a gradual walk out of the water and a gradual walk back down in the water. And then also remember, the portage trails could be anything from basically flat to a very steep hill. So I'm sorry that I can't really give you a good answer. I'm not really comfortable telling people, hey, you're too short to do this. That's not really how I roll. But at some point there is a limit. Before you can pick up or transit the canoe, you need to prepare yourself first.
If you're wearing a wide brim hat, I would highly recommend that you take it off of your head. From my experience, when wearing a wide brim hat and carrying the canoe, the hat then gets in the way because it's stuck on your head because of the brim, or it ends up blocking your view where you can't see what you're doing.
This is also where it's really handy to have a carabiner clipped to your life jacket, so that when you take your hat off, you know it's not going to fall off your head. And if for some reason the hat gets caught up in the canoe, it's not going to choke you. Do you need to remove your sunglasses, or should they stay on? Do you want to put on a bug net on your head or leave it off? Remember, you won't have the use of your hands to swat at bugs. And if you're wearing a pack, the top of the pack cannot be above the top of your shoulders. It will interfere with the yoke pads sitting on your shoulders. Are your boot laces tied?
Be aware the adjustment buckles on the top of some life jackets can become uncomfortable because of where they sit relative to the yoke pads.
Now that you have finished preparing yourself to transit the canoe, now it is time to prepare the canoe for transit.
Adjust the yoke pad width to rest squarely on your shoulders, not too close to your neck, and obviously not falling off of your shoulders where you're not utilizing the pads at all. Ideally, the pads would transfer the weight of the canoe via the yoke through the pads directly onto your shoulders, not onto your neck, where it can become very uncomfortable to wear the canoe.
This is a picture of the underside of the yoke pad. If you'll notice, they have wing nuts. Of course, those wing nuts can be very difficult to loosen, which is fine, but that's why you need to carry a large full-size multi-tool in your crew gear so that you can loosen the wing nuts to be able to adjust the yoke pads to fit the user's shoulders. Make sure the canoe is completely empty. The only thing that should be left in the canoe is the throw bag clipped to the thwart. Other than that, there should not be anything left in the canoe. If there's anything left in the canoe, it could fall off the canoe, it could interfere with your ability to carry the canoe, it could cause the canoe to be off balance, it could get hung up in a tree. There's just any number of things that could happen to you while carrying the canoe if you have anything in the canoe other than the throw bag. When you arrive at the arrival site, you can go ahead and start scoping out what you can see. Like, are there any rocks that are sticking out of the water that can damage the canoe? Are there any trees or tree limbs that would be in the way? What does the landing or beach or the arrival site itself look like? Is it sand? Is it mud? Is it narrow? Is it wide? Is it rocks? Are the rocks wet so they could be slippery? These are all things you can look at while you're sitting in the canoe. The one thing you can't see from sitting in the canoe is there are any deep water pockets at the arrival site. So once you get out of the canoe, make sure you take a look around and notice if there's anything that's going to inhibit you from smoothly walking from wherever you're going to pick the canoe up and onto the portage trail. Alright, now it's time to learn how to pick up the canoe.
Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm getting canoe kind of out of the way of some rocks so that I won't damage it when I pick it up. Alright, what I want you to note right here are where my hands are. I have the canoe up on my thighs, so that gets it up out of the water and makes it easier to put on. So note where my hands are, and then my hands are kind of crossed. I've got one hand pointed backwards and one hand pointed forwards. What I'm doing here is just getting the canoe up on my thighs so it can rest there and also the water can drain out of the canoe. Okay, so now I've moved my hands to the opposite sides of the canoe from one gunnel to the other. Note how they're still facing opposite directions. So I've formed basically a hole. So when I flip the boat over, my head will go between my arms and the yoke pads will end up on my shoulders. Also note that my hat is off of my head. The thwart with the yoke pads. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm adjusting my hands to get them on the gunnels so that I can rest the canoe on my shoulders, forwards, backwards, left, and right. You'll need your hands in front of you on the gunnels so that you can balance the canoe left and right, forwards and backwards. Now that I have the canoe kind of settled on my shoulders and balanced, I'm going to carefully walk out of the water. Remember, you do not have your hands available to you should you start to slip or fall, so you need to take your time and be careful. And now I've just exited the water and I'll begin my transit.
Let's talk through a couple of issues that you will likely encounter when walking around with the canoe. Remember, carrying the canoe is awkward. You have limited visibility, especially to your sides and definitely behind you, because you can't turn your head around very well. All right, and you also can't turn the canoe around usually on a portage trail because there are trees on both sides. So of course, if you can't see behind you very well, then you surely cannot walk backwards safely or very well. Remember, the canoe is your only way home. You and your entire crew cannot afford any mistakes. Remember that you must stay balanced and in complete control of your body's movements. You do not have the use of your hands for balance, so pay extra close attention to where you place your feet and be very careful before you move. If you find yourself on steep rocks that are wet and slippery, just take your time, take extremely small steps, and just work your way up or down the rocks, whichever it happens to be, and just stay in balanced. The key is to go slow and be safe. Once you've finished your transit, these are the things that you need to be aware of and do once you arrive at the departure site.
Now that I've arrived at the departure site, I'm taking a note of where everybody's standing. I'm looking at the water to see where rocks are that I can see from this point, and also where any debris is. Is the area clear overhead so there's no trees or anything that could hinder my ability to take the canoe off of me? So now I'm just going to walk down into the water, looking at the water, making sure that I'm not going to trip over something. What I'm really focused on right here is figuring out exactly where I'm going to put the canoe when I take it off of me. How deep is the water? Are there any rocks submerged under the water that are right up next to the water surface that could damage the canoe? Is there anybody in the way? All I'm doing right now is paying close attention to where am I going to put this canoe.
The other decision I am making right now is the canoe going to come off on the right or left side of my body.
Okay, I've found this spot here that's going to be on my right. I know that I have a canoe on my left, so I can't go to the left. And I have somebody far over to the right, but should be clear out of the way. There's no rocks here on my right. The water should be deep enough for me to at least set the canoe in. If I get the canoe in the water and realize that it's not deep enough, we could likely pull the canoe out into the deeper water so that we can load it. All right, now that I'm ready to take the canoe off my head, I have my hands up by the thwart that has the yoke pads on it, and it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and then gently flip it over, kind of rest it on my thighs, and then set it gently down in the water.
And now that we have the steps down, let's take a look at an entire portage from the arrival site to the departure site. Now this portage isn't very long, so be patient. When you're watching this, pay close attention to exactly where I'm placing my feet, which are, as best I can, on flat, step-like surfaces. The camera perspective doesn't show how steep the terrain is or how high the steps are, so keep that in mind.
So here we go. We've got everything out of the canoe. I'm going to get it up on my thighs, drain the water out, get my hands set correctly on the opposite sides of the canoe by the gunnels. Get some momentum. 2, 3. There you go. All right, get my hands forward as soon as possible so I can balance it forwards and backwards. Get it adjusted. All right, it's balanced. All right, now I'm going to walk out of the water, paying attention to where I'm putting my feet, and we'll begin our transit. Remember, those rocks can be slick, especially if they're wet. Alright, sometimes these portage trails can have little splits in the trails and you don't know which way to go, so make sure your teammates are there to show the way so that you do not go down the wrong path. You cannot turn that boat around very easy, so you absolutely must be going down the right path. Alright, now we're coming down to the waterfront. Again, looking ahead, seeing how to get into the water, and then identifying where everybody is. Is there a clear space overhead for me to take the canoe off? Are there any rocks, anything that could damage the canoe? And then I will slowly walk the canoe down into the water. Alright, identify this area here on my right. And then carefully take the canoe off my head, put it on my thighs, and gently set it down in the water. Always make sure you keep a hand on the canoe because it could definitely float away.
And there you go. You have now seen how to portage a canoe all by yourself. Make sure to keep a hand on the canoe at all times when it's in the water. The canoe will easily float or blow away. And one last bit of advice. If you can get access to a canoe at home, you can purchase yoke pads and practice this at home, provided that the yoke in the middle of the canoe is designed to fit around your neck. If your practice canoe is an aluminum canoe, but on your trip you're using a Kevlar canoe, make sure to have a teammate on the bow and the stern to help you raise the aluminum canoe. Because remember, the aluminum canoe weighs 25 pounds more than the Kevlar canoe. If you don't have a canoe to practice, then the first time you will see and have a canoe will be on the morning you leave for the backcountry. And I know that morning is busy, but it would be very wise to practice this at least 3 times before you walk down to the waterfront. As always, take your time going through all the steps in your head before you actually try to do it. It can seem intimidating, but trust me, you can do it. And that concludes this video. As always, have a blessed trip.
Hey, I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you'd like to support this channel, remember, please subscribe to this channel, tell your friends about it. Thanks for hitting that like button. Everything here is free. I want to give back to the community. I want to give to you everything here for free. I've been out in the outdoors for a long time, and it's great that I can be able to give all this information to you. That is what's most important to me. If you would like to give back, I do have a GoFundMe page set up, and you can follow the link. And if you'd like to, if you're a youth with your parents' support, I would gladly accept your donations. Thank you and have a blessed day.